Sounds good.
Okay, it's just about to go live. So when you see it in the upper left-hand corner, you are welcome to start.
Cool.
Actually, we're live, so you can start anytime you want. I'll stop the share.
Oh, sure. All right. Well, so today is April 27th, and this is a special virtual only meeting of the CDAC. With that, I think we'll go ahead and start the call to order. David Prina, acting chair, present.
Oh, he's muted.
Oh, Lanny, I think you're muted.
I unmuted you. You're good to go.
Lanny Ola's present.
All right, with two present, we'll go ahead and start. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Go ahead and submit any and every email, and Leslie will read them off to us, so then we can address them. So feel free to. We're going to play a little bit loose with the rules and the timing here. So I think we're going to go into the next agenda item, which is a presentation regarding the CBDG-CV funds, and we'll come back to any public comments at a later date. So with that, I think it is up to Sharon.
I'll jump in. This is Gloria Stearns. I'm the Community Development Director. Thank you, CDAC, for having a meeting tonight. Thank you, Leslie, for the slides. Let's go to the second slide, please. So tonight, one of the topics that we're discussing is what is called CDBG CV. And this is a special round of funding that the City of Seaside has received. It's a special allocation of $199,874 to be used for COVID-related activities. The slide that you have up on your screen at this point in time is actually something from HUD that explains what we can use the funding for. And this two-page summary is very short compared to usual HUD. If we could go back, please. The usual HUD slides. Back to the, we'll get there. Okay, I'll just keep going. So anyway, it explains some of the stuff. That's okay. It explains some of the things that we can do, and I'm going to run through in a little bit more detail some of the items that we can do. And the purpose tonight is you're not making any decisions, but we just wanted to have a conversation about these are all the things that we can do with this funding. Let's have a conversation to see what it is that we can do. And I'm going to take notes about your conversation, and then I'll be relaying those as I go back and talk with other entities as we move forward. So Leslie, next slide, please. All right, so to start our summary and to boil down some of the information, there are different things we can do with the funding, and one of the first ones that is in almost any CDBG funding round is building and construction. However, this round is limited to medical, quarantine, testing types of facilities, or rehabilitating a space so that way you can fix the HVAC to better control some of the breathing and isolate germs in places that you choose. The challenge with doing something like this is the amount of money, while it might seem a lot to people, is actually not when you start looking at construction costs of things, and especially when you get into medical construction. So really, when I look at our list of what we can do, I kind of put an X through this one and say, well, that's nice that they have that, but this really isn't practical for what we can do. Economic development is another activity that we can do with the CDBG CV funds. One of the things that we can do in economic development are grants. However, the grants are exceptionally limited. This is nothing like SBA money. I'm going to repeat that. This is not SBA money. This is not anything like SBA money. This is coming from HUD. It has very distinct rules. It has very distinct regulations. If you mess up on your rules and regulations, you have to pay the government back. So The grants are limited to medical supply firms, cleaning firms, health-related firms, quarantine-related firms. It's very hard to do those particular grants. There is an option to do economic development loans in this program. And the loans would have to be for the purpose of retaining jobs that are held by low to moderate income employees. So when we were talking to HUD about what does this mean, they would need to prove to us, so if we did business loans, the applicants would need to prove to us at the city that they have applied for all of the other sources of funding. So they would have had to try to get those SBA loans that you're hearing about, the EIDLs and the PPP loans. They would have had to be denied for those. They would have had to apply for other loans as well. So right now we know that Community Foundation locally has loans that they're doing in grants. We know that the Monterey Peninsula Chamber of Commerce has them. We know that Monterey County has them. The applicants would have to apply to all of those and have been turned down before we would be able to issue a loan. So there's a certain amount of paperwork we would have to do to verify all of those applications, to verify all of those turn downs, and then we would also have staffing to underwrite the loans. This is all totally doable, but I just want everybody to understand that there are limitations for doing this. One of the things that we've been trying to do is, because the city of Seaside is not typically in the loan business, we've been reaching out to partners as to who might help us. And some of those are entities that I've mentioned already. We've been talking to them, and so far we haven't heard the word yes. We've had some interesting conversations, but nobody said, yes, I would like to help you do that, Seaside. One note, too, is you might hear that nearby cities, specifically the city of Monterey and the city of Marina, are doing loans for their businesses. And one of the things that they did is they chose to use general funds for their loans. And by doing the general funds for their loans, they don't have all these HUD rules and regulations that they have to go through that I discussed about examining all the paperwork. Next slide, Leslie. Another option for the use of the CDBG CV funds is for what's called public service. And in this case, it's very limited to what you would normally consider public service in your CDAC commission. It is exclusively for COVID-19 testing, COVID-19 job training. It also does Meals on Wheels, which is interesting because if I recall correctly, that's something that CDAC usually likes to fund anyway. But this is really looking at risk or quarantined people who really need to have that service. It also allows you to do supplies to carry out an essential public service. So even though there are limits, you can do things that can be interesting. So in this case, we talked to HUD about what would testing look like. And they said we would have to do testing. And I had specifically said, what if we do the antibody testing so we could get our workers back to work sooner, you know, and that way our workers are like certified, hey, I'm good to go. I'm ready, you know, I'm ready to go back to work again. And they said we would have to make sure that it's going to the people that are qualified and in Seaside. So we wouldn't be able to open it up to the general public. It would have to be very limited, again, to the people that you have to benefit the CDBG funds. And so that was just a little bit of a gotcha on that one. Plus, there's been a little bit of controversy about the antibody studies as to whether that actually means that you're immune or not. And so we're trying to stay on top of all of this. And because the health aspect of it and the medical aspect can change so quickly, I'm not sure if we want to enter that arena with this amount of funding yet. I think it's a laudable goal to try to do something like testing, but I'm not sure yet. And we learn more every day about this. One thing that they told us that HUD advised us is that we could do a food bank donation, and that would be something that would be supplies to carry out a service. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later on. But next, one of the other options that they give you with the CDBG CV funds is something they call planning, capacity building, and technical assistance. And this is basically allowing a local government to get the funds for training or planning, and they could increase their knowledge and capacity for helping to get CDBG funds out. And as much as our city might be facing a fiscal crisis, I do not believe that this is a good use of our funds at this time. I think we should do something to benefit our community. So if I could put a little X over that one, I would put a little X over that one and say thank you, but no thank you. Next slide, please. So just a reminder, when you do your CDBG program, there's always national objectives that you have to achieve. So you have to keep in mind what you're charged with doing when you're serving on this committee. And your goal is to figure out how to benefit people that are in the low to moderate income level, or to address slums and blight needs. And that might be when we get into the reconstruction of like a hotel or something for people to recover from COVID. But again, we don't have quite that much money. or to meet an urgent need. So keep those in mind as we talk about some of these things. What are your national objectives? You know, because we're very limited on what we can do. So I give you next some examples about how we could meet these national objectives. And we talked to HUD about this. And they said, if we do a food donation, if we donated food to the elderly in Seaside, then we would have the presumption of benefit that they are indeed the people of the low to moderate income persons. So we wouldn't necessarily have to get an income statement from all of these people receiving the food, but there's a presumed eligibility that they meet those benefits. And so it eases up on some of our documentation a little bit. And that would be the same as if we did the donating food to the homeless. So it's sort of the same concept. It's assuming that they are indeed at need, that they would be a low to moderate income person. One of the other examples that I gave you there is doing possibly loans to businesses in Census Tract 137. So just to remind everybody, Census Tract 137 is probably our most challenged census tract in the city of Seaside. So they have a very high poverty rate. It is probably one that could use the most love in our entire city. And so the businesses that are in Census Tract 137, again, are sort of like a presumed benefit, that they are expected that they have a lot of low to moderate income employees, and that our goal would be to try to save those businesses so they could have a job to help them get through this crisis. So that was kind of the concept of, those are some examples of what we could do to meet your national objectives, again, within the confines of this CDBG CV funding. And again, you'll notice I don't call it CDBG, I call it CDBG CV. That's exactly how HUD uses it, so it doesn't get confused with your regular purpose CDBG funds. Now, when we talked to HUD, and we've been talking to them and emailing them quite a bit, they gave us a couple of hints, and we said, you know, like, what are other cities doing? What are they thinking about? And they said, do an activity that you have the capacity to handle. They said, don't try to start doing something that you're not in the business of. So earlier when I mentioned we could rehab a hotel and fix their HVAC system, you know, and we could house and quarantine patients there. That's not something we do. We don't have that expertise within the city of Seaside. So that would be creating an entirely new program within our city, and that would be a challenge for us because it's not something that we might be really good at, you know, and we don't want to learn what we're good at and what we're not so great at when we're trying to benefit a community that's in such a need right now. They also said that your goal is to get that funding out in the community quickly. Now, we can still do that in the current fiscal year that we're in, or we can do that in the upcoming fiscal year. So we do have a little bit of leeway and time to think about it. That's why tonight I just would like a discussion with everybody, just to see what are you thinking now that you have some knowledge about CDBG CV. What are your thoughts? And I just, at this point, I will just stop speaking and I will just say, I will welcome your discussion.
Thank you very much for that. Was there anything else before we opened up a large discussion from either Sharon or anyone else? All right, I had one question on this. Are we so the normal funds were dispersed through subrecipients? Would that be the same here, or when we do decide on how to use this, is that we are coming up with the proposals ourselves? Did we need subrecipients for this ahead of time?
At this point, what we're doing is we're just having a discussion. So I would say, think about what are the concepts you want to use it for, and then we would identify the partners. The partners are going to be very different from what you're used to. Your partners you have now do not do COVID-19 testing. So there's all sorts of different things we're going to have to look at. So I urge you not to think of the who, it's the what. What is it that you are interested in doing to help your community at this dire time? You're muted.
I keep going. I was just going to ask Lanny, did you have any questions?
Lanny is muted.
He's also muted. Oh.
can I get copies of the slides?
Yes.
Okay. I think we should do something that we could probably do, like a food drive.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that we could, that the food drive for elderly and homeless is probably the most promising, and I think we already have a lot of pre-established relationships in that regard. So I'm definitely up for that. For the for the business, I'm also definitely very open for the business assistance as well for track 137. Unfortunately, I don't. Yeah, you said don't worry about the who, but all three of those options sound good to me.
Yeah, let's do something that we can probably actually do.
It might be helpful if you told me, like, maybe a ranking, like which one do you like first, second, and third then? That might just help me to understand a little better.
Okay. I think the food would be first, and then helping the businesses.
Yeah, I'd say similar too for donation to food than businesses, especially for the donation to elderly, since they tend to be at much higher risk for COVID. So I would go elderly food or elderly, homeless, and businesses.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Leslie, was there any public comment?
Let me double check 1 second.
Sure.
Second to fill in. No public comments have been received.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
What about
a couple more?
Providing
Go ahead.
what about providing some PPE to people?
I think we could do something like that. I didn't put it on the list because I didn't know if we could secure it, but I know that like the city has started sewing masks. So if the county, for instance, extends our shelter in place order, which we think they might do, if they give us a mandatory mask order, which we think they might do, we might be able to buy supplies, like let's say to have our city sewers. You know, we do have people stepping up and sewing right now, making hundreds of masks.
Oh yeah. We could do distribution of the mask and the food at the same time. Do a drive-through.
I agree.
Yeah, and equip the people distributing it or distributing the food with the masks as well. Yeah, sorry, I'm still looking through some of the categories, but I mean, I think you did a Gloria, I think you did a really good job of eliminating the things that are probably out of reach. So I think my prioritization stands.
Well, what I like about the approach of adding in some PPE supplies is that we could do some of that anyways, because even if you carve out, think about it, like $1,000 worth of fabric is a lot of fabric, you know, and that's a lot of sewing supplies. I could produce a lot of masks for somebody. So I think that would be something that we could almost do anyway. So what I'll do then is I will take some of your thoughts. We'll go back and we'll talk to HUD about what's next. We're going to have some other meetings and keep moving forward with this just to see where we end up landing and have discussions both internally and externally to find out how we go forward. But I really do appreciate you all taking the time tonight to share these thoughts with me. I think I've learned something just by hanging out with you tonight, so I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Of course. Let's see if I can bring up. See, I don't believe there's any other business. Let me see. I just wanted to double check again, Leslie, if there was any public comments.
1 second, double check. Nothing's come in just yet. I'll refresh. No public comments on this item, but if I can make just one comment, I do like what you guys said about the food drive with the mass distribution. So we actually will be doing a food drive at City Hall this Saturday. Sorry, Gloria, for jumping in. You said we'll do it this weekend. We are looking for Seaside residents to sew masks, and we will, if we have enough, we will be distributing them this Saturday. So it's the perfect combination. You guys really hit the nail on the head. People who are in need, this is exactly where they're going to come. So I just wanted to say your idea is exactly what we're looking for right now.
Right on.
Perfect. Yeah, good idea, Lanny. I would also say that it's, one thing that I've noticed is some people don't use the mask quite correctly. So I don't know if there's maybe could also bring some accompanying guidance on how to use it. I know some people tend to they'll pull it down and then touch their face and then put it up again, which kind of defeats the purpose. So I don't know if there's a nurse or someone who can also help the teaching and training.
Yeah, you know, you're right. I see people using the same mask over and over. The way they dispose of their gloves.
Yeah, and I know that for some people, it actually creates a false sense of security if they have it, but then they're using it incorrectly. That actually can make things worse. So
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let us know. When is the deadline, or when are we thinking about how to actually distribute the funds?
We don't have a timeline established because we weren't sure what we're going to do just yet. So tonight is a discussion. But again, there is a sense of urgency. HUD is trying to have us get these funds out as quickly as we can. And just to give you a heads up too, there's a possibility, and I'm going to say a very slim possibility, that there could be a second round of CDBG CV funding. We have no guarantee that we would get a second round. But I think if we come up with a very nice use that benefits our committee, and some of the things I heard tonight are very well rounded, that might position us nicely with HUD, and they might see that people are really trying to get these funds out quickly to benefit the community. So I almost think it's in our best interest to get them out sooner rather than later.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm actually absolutely willing to have any other special meetings that we need between now and the next regularly scheduled one. So totally open to as many special meetings as we need.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
What if we make I don't know, like a questionnaire for the residents so that they might be able to have some input as to what they think we should do with it? Or do we not want to do that?
I think a questionnaire gets into slowing down the process too much, because then you have to get how you distribute the questionnaire, all the social media, who's responding to it, how many times they may have responded. People might say, well, she filled it out 15 times and she stacked the deck. I think giving people the opportunity in meetings like this for them to comment publicly. There'll be also additional meetings that we'll be doing, as well as you have to remember any of the decisions that this body makes goes to council. And those are all public hearings as well. So People have more than enough opportunities in our city. We strive to be inclusive, and we don't take that lightly. We respect that greatly. But in this case, we really have to have that sense of urgency. I think it's more important for us. We know people that are hungry. We know people that need these things. So I think we have to, just choose quickly between some of these items, and do we divide it up? Do we do it all as one thing? And it really is going to be a faster decision rather than slower.
Okay.
All right. Was there any other business on the, well, actually, I guess we can't do that. Yeah, so
Chair?
keep us informed and we'll be.
Can I make a quick
What was
comment? I apologize. We received a public comment. It was a little delayed. Is it okay if I read it?
Oh, yes, go for it.
Okay, this is from Miss Sherry Hasty. It says, CPY has been working with our families and getting food. Fresh vegetables, eggs, and milk would be awesome. We give gift certificates to a few of our families to grocery outlet. Perhaps we can use some of these smaller markets, help them as well as help our families.
A great idea.
Yeah, I think that's good. As long as that's within the program boundaries, I'm totally on board with that. So I was just looking through here. All right. Well, I think that was our last agenda item. Yeah, we're more than happy. Like I said, I think we're both more than happy to have as many special meetings as we need to get this off the ground and to get the money dispersed. So yeah, keep us informed. Seeing no other public comment or other agenda items, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
All right, seconded. All right. With 2 votes, I think the meeting is now adjourned.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Well
Thank you
done.
very much.
All right.
Thanks, Leslie.
All right.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We'll see you soon.
What
All
happened
right,
to
and
Gloria's
thank you
camera?
for that presentation. What was that?
I said, what happened to Gloria's camera? Is she camera shy? That's why she didn't come up?
No, we want to make sure that the commissioners are the ones that are under focus on the video. So when the public sees it, when they come to the meetings, you're the one that they're looking at, not at staff. So typically we just leave the commissioner videos.
Ah, I see.
It's a respect thing, Lanny.
What's that?
It's a respect thing, Lanny. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate
Stay
it.
safe.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.